This is Horror Podcast.
Welcome to This is Horror, a podcast for readers, writers, and creators. I'm Michael David Wilson, and every episode alongside my co-host Bob Pastorella, we chat with the world's best writers about writing, life lessons, creativity, and much more. Today on This is Horror, I am talking to Josh Curran, the audiobook narrator of Daddy's Boy and the mastermind behind the Miscreations Podcast. Now, we recorded this one about a month ago near the release of Daddy's Boy, but I've held off releasing it because Daddy's Boy is not yet on Audible. However, it is on every other platform. So now is the time to unleash this conversation into the world. And if you want to pick up the audio version of Daddy's Boy, my favorite platform is audiobooks.com, and Spotify is pretty good for audiobooks too. But there are plenty of other platforms, so choose your favorite, apart from Audible, because it's not there at the moment. And do let me know how you get on. And do listen after the interview if you want to know about some of the upcoming books that are being released this week. So with that said, we'll take a quick advert break and jump into it.
What if the end of the world didn't come with a bang, but with a breach? In the Infernal Age, Demongate, a failed experiment destroys all technology, killing millions, and opens a gateway to something far worse. Demons now roam the earth, and humanity's only hope lies in adapting to the ashes of a broken world. If you love the creeping dread of the mist, the poignant grit of the road, and the dark humor of the cabin in the woods, you'll feel right at home in this post-apocalyptic blend of horror and sci-fi. The Infernal Age, Demongate, is available now on Amazon, Audible, and bookshop.org. Step to the gate, if you dare.
It was as if the video had unzipped my skin, slunk inside my tapered flesh, and become one with me.
From the creator of This is Horror comes a new nightmare for the digital age, The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. After a teacher receives a weirdly arousing video, his life descends into paranoia and obsession. More videos follow, each containing information no stranger could possibly know. But who's sending them, and what do they want? The answers may destroy everything and everyone he loves. The Girl in the Video is The Ring meets Fatal Attraction for the iPhone generation. Available now in paperback, ebook, and audio.
Okay, here it is. It is Josh Curran on This is Horror. Josh, welcome to This is Horror.
Hiya. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here. And of course, the occasion is that this is part of a number of Daddy's Boy themed conversations that we're having to coincide with the launch of Daddy's Boy. And of course, you are the sound, the voice of Daddy's Boy, because you are the narrator himself.
That's right. Where do we even begin with that?
Well, I mean, we've got two choices, essentially. We could begin with Daddy's Boy, or what I often like to do with This is Horror is kind of begin with you and your early life. So, I don't begin every episode with you specifically, like Dean Koontz on, and I'm like, what do you know about Josh Curran's early life? But with a guest, their early life. So what are kind of some of the memories during those formative years? And are there any early life lessons that you particularly remember growing up?
Okay, that's a tough one. I didn't think we'd start with my life as a whole. So I was born in Nottingham, in a little village outside it called Stapleford. I've always sort of been a performative type. I always enjoyed the drama classes, the music and singing classes. But in the background, I was still having to work on my maths and English and try and get a career that way. Then left Nottingham and went to Lincoln to study drama and theatre. So I became one of the theatre kids for a little while, just having the time of my life up on stage, doing that sort of stuff. But then, as happens with a lot of theatre kids, you leave university and it's like, well, now time to get a job. And so I met someone there called Daniel Willcocks, who I think you know.
I'm very familiar with Daniel Willcocks, yeah.
So the first time I recall him reaching out to me was I was running a creative writing society for the Students' Union at Lincoln. And I just got this Facebook message from this person saying, hey, I'm an author. I was wondering if maybe I could come in and share some stuff about my books or run a workshop. And say, yeah, sure. And then a couple of weeks go by and said, oh, sorry, something's come up. I'm going to have to reschedule. So that's fine. And then a few more weeks go by and said, so that time we rescheduled for, sorry, I'm going to have to reschedule for another time. And something's gone wrong with the book. And I'm sorry, I can't do this. It's like, okay, that's absolutely fine. And then I was thinking this time, who is this mystery man? And then eventually I met him at this open mic poetry night. And I could swear I'd seen him somewhere before. And then I finally remembered him. During my Freshers Week, he was with this team of people who were going around doing chlamydia testing. They were like trying to get
this feels apropos for Daddy's Boy. I've never heard this Daniel Willcocks story, but this is great.
And he... so basically he was one of the people just going around getting everyone to do chlamydia testing. And so, that's where I know this author from. But then I had him as a contact, and eventually he put up a post asking for narrators for a podcast he was working on called The Other Stories. So I did that. I went out, I bought a new microphone, I set up everything up, did an audition for it. And it's like, yeah, sure, you can record this this test story. And I did, and it was, I can't remember what it was called, but it was about this man who was undergoing a procedure to replace his head with a new head, or rather replace his body with a new body. And it had this crazy German scientist in it. So that was sort of my first experience of really doing audio narration and audio recording. So I learned, since then I've done about 200, I want to say, episodes of The Other Stories, and a few other little podcasts as well, one of which you wrote a story on called Miscreation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you may be doing a bit of a disservice to say that you did some narration for Miscreations, because that was your own miscreation, as I recall.
Yeah. So after a while with Hawk and Cleaver, who created The Other Stories, I went out. So at first I was invited to a Christmas party at Acast, the publishers which Hawk and Cleaver were using at the time. I can't remember if they still are. And I saw they had a recording studio there, and they said that creators could just book it and use it for free. So I thought, well, why not? Now we've got that. And I had a bunch of contacts in London at the time who would happily do audio drama stuff. So I thought, you know what, let's make an audio drama podcast. We've got the time, resources, and it turned out pretty great.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. And I mean, I wasn't planning on jumping into Miscreations right now, and I did want to talk a little bit about Daniel's passion for chlamydia testing, something I didn't realize that he had until this moment. But as we've gone to Miscreations, I mean, quite a few listeners will...
if you want.
Well, I mean, there's always time to come back to chlamydia, so don't you worry. We've got enough time for that. But a number of listeners to this podcast may be familiar with Hawk and Cleaver's The Other Stories. I mean, the idea there is typically it's one narrator, and there's some sound effects. It's very well produced. I mean, for me, I think the two kind of fiction podcasts within this genre that are the best are the No Sleep podcast and Hawk and Cleaver's The Other Stories. They're my personal favorites. But then
Thank you.
Miscreations, I mean, I think that was a level above, because not only did you have all the good things about, the other stories, but you had essentially a full cast. And I think just having multiple narrators on each track, it really took it to the next level. So, I mean, you only had 6 episodes of that. I was eagerly
Only 5.
waiting. Well, you
Yeah.
had 5 and one that I apparently imagined. Maybe Dan penned it about chlamydia. And yeah, I was hoping for a season 2. I did periodically, ask Dan and Luke Condor, another one of the main players for Hawk and Cleaver, but it's not happened.
That's a sad story, I'm afraid. So the first series of Miscreation, it was 5 episodes, and I was basically just mostly using people from the university I was doing my master's at, friends, other contacts in London to do it. And it was taking up a lot of their time, because producing an audio drama takes up a lot more time and resources than it does producing a single narrated episode of the other stories. So it's getting a couple of hours of these people's times to come into a studio, record, do re-records, do a bunch of retakes and everything. You saw it, you were there, and people coming in to do the episode you wrote. By the time it got to season 2, I felt I can't bring these people. Oh, sorry. The other thing is they were doing it for free. No one was being paid for anything other than travel expenses. If that, a lot of them just didn't bother asking me for them. I felt if I did it the second time, I would have to give them some compensation. Even if it was just the minimum amount allowed by the acting union, equity. So it would be something like, I think at the time it would have been about at least £45 an hour. So what I did was I was getting a Kickstarter ready, and came up with a bunch of tiers, set a goal, and stretch goals for how many episodes we needed. And then I was ready to launch that in April 2020. Guess what happened?
Well, yeah. Oh,
The
my
pandemic
goodness.
happened. No one was. I could have done it over Zoom or something, created something like that, but it wouldn't have been the same, because one of the things I really enjoyed during the recording of Miscreation was the chemistry, the cast chemistry. You could see people bouncing off each other, so all getting together to feed that energy in the room. And I've listened to some audio dramas and some stuff like that that's recorded remotely with people in different rooms, and it doesn't sound right, I'm afraid. Like even the really high quality ones. Like sometimes you get sort of they're recording on different microphones and their audio is not equalized properly and it sounds a bit weird, or there's different room background noise. And other times it's like they're just reading the script to themselves in a room, and it just doesn't sound like it's 2 or 3 people having a conversation together. So I decided if I wanted to do a season 2, it would have to be people in a room together, recording. And then during the pandemic, I left London to live in Milton Keynes. At the moment, I'm living near Heathrow Airport, so sorry if you hear any plane noise. So yeah, I went to live in Milton Keynes because basically London landlord bullshit. They wanted to raise rents horribly, and I had a friend who just bought a house. So sadly, also during that time, I lost a lot of the contacts I had for that living in London, because they'd all moved away as well. They'd basically moved out all across the world. So now I'm back in London. I sort of have a chance to rebuild some of those contacts again and maybe look at series 2 of Miscreation. Who knows?
Wow, so that was a sad story that had a little bit of light at the end that there could be a second series, but yeah, I mean these things like they're not only logistically difficult to do as you pointed out, but yeah, the financing is a whole other level when
Yeah.
you kind of factor in all the main players. And I suppose we should point out too, because you said, all the actors were doing it voluntarily. Like the podcast itself, it wasn't monetized. It's not like you got like a fat check or something, smoking your cigar as you got this free labor. So it was very much,
I bought the house with royalties from Miscreation.
yeah, that's how you wound up living uh, not next to, I presume, Heathrow Airport. It would be
Yeah,
decidedly
a couple of
louder.
houses away.
But I mean, living so near to Heathrow, that must present another challenge when you're doing kind of voice work in your own home, because
Yeah, but I mean, it's always been a problem. So I actually wrote an episode of the other stories, sort of similar to that, called The Perfect Recording, because during recording so many of their episodes, there's just so much going on outside. And it's like people decide to wait until I'm recording something to go out and either have a shouting match with someone. The cats and dogs start running around chasing each other, children screaming. I imagine you've had that sort of experience as well when recording stuff, right?
oh yeah. The other day I was doing a episode to promote the book on a different podcast, and it happened to be the same time that my local area decided to have a festival. So there were men literally walking past the apartment, banging drums and singing in Japanese, which, given I live in Japan, the singing in Japanese wasn't so unusual. If it happened in London, you'd be like, this is a really bizarre kind of festival. You might think it was a ritual and get quite frightened. What is happening? And the co-host, he lives very near a train track. So yeah, he has to be pretty quick to mute his microphone because that train is a rolling. But going back to writing and the other stories and voice acting, I mean, one of the most effective early stories on the other stories was Daniel Johnson. You wrote that. So I mean, for people who haven't listened to this cult classic, how would you describe Daniel Johnson? What is the elevator pitch?
Um, a man wakes up next to his wife, Daniel Johnson, and his kids, Daniel Johnson, and goes about his normal day. That everyone in the world is now Daniel Johnson except for this man, and that is normal. That's how I'd describe it in an elevator pitch. I'm not sure if it would get approved in that elevator pitch, but I don't know how else I'd pitch it like that.
I mean, so this is pretty much my introduction to your work as a writer. And I mean, so firstly, do you consider yourself in equal parts a writer and a actor? Are they both of a kind of equal weighting in terms of your love for creativity? And how typical is this wonderful slice of, I mean, almost bizarro or surrealist fiction for what you do when you're writing?
That's a really difficult question to answer. Normally, I'd just say I'm a creative because, like, I just tend to do a bit of everything. Like, I enjoy pretty much every sort of aspect of it up to a point. So I love writing stuff, narrating stuff, acting on stage, acting via audio, just whatever the creative medium is, except for visual art, which I'm crap at. I just sort of jump into it. And I'm going to sound really pretentious saying this, but I feel it's limiting to just say I'm a writer, I'm an actor, or whatever. But so I don't care what the label is, really. I just say creative, and this is what I'm doing right now. I'm narrating this right now. I'm writing this right now. Sorry, what was the question again?
Well, I mean, you definitely answered the question, because it was essentially in terms of like writing and narrating about the kind of weighting in terms of identity. But you said your identity is as a creative, so you don't even think in those terms of like, oh, I'm 60% actor and 40%
Yeah.
writer. And then the other part was how typical the Daniel Johnson story is to, I suppose, your preference when it comes to writing. I mean, is there a genre that you feel most comfortable in?
Again, not really. The reason I wrote Daniel Johnson as it was because I was specifically targeting the other stories as a platform. I think it just because I've written a few others for the other stories as well, and they're really the only short stories I've had published specifically for that reason, because I was targeting that podcast, which meant I had to target one of the genres they were publishing. I've had a few different ideas in sort of other genres as well, some of which I've worked on, some of which I haven't. But I don't really have a preference. It's just generally what I feel at the time. So I feel comfortable writing in pretty much any genre.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you surprised by the reaction to Daniel Johnson?
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest surprises, because like the first sort of hint that something had happened was like Luke sent me a message sort of after he read it and just said, Luke Condor, one of the creators of the other stories, messaged me saying, Josh, I really love this one. It's fantastic. It's going to be really popular, I think, which he hadn't said for any of the other. I mean, he'd received them nicely. The other stories had written for the other stories, but this one is like a special message he'd sent. So initially I thought, okay, like he likes it, it's going to be good. And then just after it published, I just went on Facebook and saw like 1 billion notifications, and most of them had the word Daniel Johnson in them. And at first I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And then after reading about 50 of the comments, like, oh God, so much pressure. Like they're asking for a sequel already? What? But yeah, people loved it, and I don't know, it just sort of stuck on for a while, and it became sort of a little bit of the other story's identity.
Yeah, and I think for people who haven't heard it, I mean, you've given them the pitch, which, of course,
Yeah.
another pitch is just 2 words,
Daniel
Daniel
Johnson.
Johnson.
Yeah.
But it's available now, given that like it's a podcast, they don't get rid of it. It's not like one of these where they put it behind a paywall after a certain number of years. So we will link to it in the show notes, and people can, experience the magic of Daniel Johnson. But yeah, I suppose too, it's because it's such a, I mean, it's easy to quote because of the nature. It's kind of something that you can immediately become a part of and, and reference to your friends. So I haven't got the statistics, but I imagine it must be one of the most downloaded episodes too.
I think so, yeah. Just because it's one of the earlier ones as well, and it's very easy to re-listen to as well. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of new people going into it will be listening to that episode, because it will appear near the top of like Spotify charts if you search a podcast or other podcast platforms. And also, they did a re-release as well with Luke narrating it.
Oh my
So
goodness! Because
it's
I
on
think
there twice.
was did Persephone narrate
Yeah,
it?
it's definitely narrated the original.
Wow. There's an I didn't even know there's an alternate version.
Yeah.
Oh. I mean, they
You've
could
got the
keep...
American version and the British version.
Yeah. We need the European version now. They can
Yeah, we
just
need to
every
locate it.
5-year anniversary get a different Daniel Johnson to narrate it.
Yeah. Which goes against the idea of Daniel Johnson. It should be the same person doing it repeatedly.
Well, yeah, I guess so. and we mentioned Miscreations before. What I didn't notice when we were talking about it was it looks like, unless I'm mistaken, do you have a Miscreations thing in the
I do.
background? It almost is it like a framed print, or is it a special kind of CD, or what is that?
It's a small canvas, and it was a prototype for one of the Kickstarter goals. So I bought that to see what it would look like, and it turned out great. And that's now the only one.
Yeah, so you need to do this Kickstarter. We need to do season 2. So there it is in the background.
Yeah. Everyone, note you might get a small canvas of the logo at the time, which because of the rights to the logo, I might have to get a new one. So that might be outdated as well.
Yeah, it's going to be dodgy grounds if you give away a canvas with a logo that you no longer have the license to. I think that Norman from Daddy's Boy would probably do it, but you shouldn't take your life lessons from him.
Yeah. Maybe we should do a life lessons book for Norman.
I mean, with Daddy's Boy, the success or lack thereof will determine kind of what happens in the future. Because, I mean, everything I've done up until this point has been kind of more in horror. And even though there's always been dark humor, it's not been like the whole book was a dark comedy. So, I mean, my previous book, House of Bad Memories, I'd say that was a dark thriller with comedic moments. But Daddy's Boy, I think it is a dark comedy with elements of thriller and crime. So if there's a demand, if people say this is what they want, then I mean, there's got to be a Daddy's Boy too. And yeah, I like the idea of dreaming it gets so big that there's mileage for a non-fiction book by Norman with his life lessons. Yeah, I don't think that anyone should follow them, but it could turn people's lives around if they just do the reverse as to what he tells you to do. Get Wild Bow to do a forward, maybe.
It's good for the public record, regardless.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, if it gets really big, then we need someone to record Colin's hip hop album. Finally, from TikTok to the big leagues. Which you had to rap for the recording.
I did. Are we going to get into Daddy's Boy now and
I mean, we're
gangster rap scene?
Yeah. I do want to talk more about your creative life and how that kind of works. But yeah, fuck it. Let's go to Daddy's Boy right now. So, had you ever, as part of narrating a story, been asked to rap in the middle of the story before?
Surprisingly, no.
No, so there's a first.
How shall we start from when you gave me the text of the book? Because the other thing to mention, this is also the first audiobook I've ever recorded.
Yeah.
I've done a bunch of other stories and blah, 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 so on. I've probably done the length of a couple of audiobooks in total, but first time sitting down and just doing one solid audiobook, it's definitely an experience. So you sent me the text of Daddy's Boy, and I got it up on the big screen and read it in a few different sessions. Some of it I read it on the tube, which I learned was a bad idea, because basically there were just some bits which I was just laughing out loud at, and just if no one asked me, but if they had asked me, I wouldn't be able to explain it to them.
Yeah, and ironically, even if you'd have said, "Well, just pick up Daddy's Boy by Michael David Wilson," at the time they couldn't. So it's like, is this guy just crazy? He's invented a book that he's telling us he's laughing at. Let's just get away.
Yeah. So yeah, I read through the entire thing in a few different sessions, and I was sort of I had two processes going as I was reading it. The first was reading it for the enjoyment and the fun, getting to know the characters, blah, blah. And the second process I had going on in my head was, how do I record this as a book? What's this character? Who are they? How do they sound like? How do I do this? And then going through that, and we get to a point where there is a character doing a gangster rap on TikTok. And process one, enjoying the book, was laughing, going, "Oh, this is amazing." And process two was going, "Oh God, oh God, oh God." It's like, and then I sort of came to the conclusions, like, it's meant to be cringy and terrible in the story, so I can have as much fun with it as I want. And as you describe the character, something like, not hit puberty yet pitch. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe his voice is high as his someone whose balls have yet to drop. It's something along those lines. Yeah.
So then I sort of had to determine how high is that, and
you don't measure people based on how low their balls are hanging. You can't just like look at someone and be like, "Oh, that's about a mid-30s ball drift," as we call it in the trade.
So I think before I even finished reading the book, I just started practicing some gangster rap in falsetto, which was an experience, and then just sort of deciding what pitch to keep it at. I think in the end, even after my first record, I re-recorded it again to bring him in line with how he sounded later. Because I think the very first time I recorded it, he was so high, balls yet to drop. But when he appeared later in the book, he just sounded, and he's meant to sound annoying, but like so annoying, the listener might have just turned off at that point. So I sort of re-recorded to make him a little bit lower, but still balls not yet dropped.
Or like maybe one ball had just
maybe
a little, just a cheeky
half a ball.
Yeah. Half a ball. Yeah, and I mean, so you were talking about practicing rap. I know as well that there were whenever you had to re-record, you would shout the lines rather loudly multiple times. I wonder,
I wasn't shouting all of the lines.
No.
Only lines that were shouted originally.
Yeah, so we should clarify that. Otherwise, people might not want to buy the audiobook. It's like he just shouts it, everything. Was there ever a moment where like you were practicing or you were narrating and you kind of knew for a fact that somebody did overhear you, or I don't know, were you practicing gangster rap and then someone walks in? Oh
no, definitely not. I would have taken a million precautions before I let that happen. Doors locked, everything closed, going around making sure every window is closed, making sure I record at a time where I hope my neighbors aren't in. Just, yeah. I've done a little bit of soundproofing to my room. I've stuck up acoustic pads on it. So fingers crossed, no one can hear me when I'm recording in there. But there's always that worry, that anxiety that someone is when I'm recording a line such as, "I did have a wank to Andy Peters. I did have a wank to Andy Peters. I did have a wank to Andy Peters."
And of course now
This
you're
one isn't a
possibly...
soundproof.
I was going to say now you're saying that in a non-soundproofed room. I believe you're not in.
Yeah, it's a bank holiday currently, so I'm sure my neighbours are all in.
I
And
hope
I'm
that
having
they
a bit
heard
of
you
rum
a
as
few
well.
weeks ago when you did it, and it's like, oh God, he's talking to someone else about his Andy Peters wank. Why?
Yeah. So this is Exhibit B right now. They've already got Exhibit A from a few weeks ago.
Yeah, maybe one of them is going to take you aside and be like, it's okay.
We all
Andy
do it,
Peters
Josh.
is reasonably attractive. It's fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry. You're in a safe space. This is a progressive area. You can wank to Andy Peters, which is one of the
area of
take-homes for
Heathrow.
readers. But I mean, what were some of the parts that you had to retake the most, apart from the aforementioned Andy Peters?
So there's two parts for different reasons. I'll try not to get too much into spoiler territory. So the first part was a character called Gary. Gary only really appears in the latter half of the book. And he's this gangster working for big old Tricky Ricky, and he's fairly low down the food chain, not as low as Colin or high as Colin. I can't remember. But when I initially recorded him, and I sort of had the idea for how to do his voice, I can only really describe it as generic thug. And after I finished recording the whole thing and I went back to him, just listening back, I thought, I really don't like his voice in this. Partly because he's got a brother, Pat, and the two sounded nothing alike, as though they hadn't grown up in the same house or whatever. And it seemed weird. So I just went back and I re-recorded him with a completely different voice, something a bit closer to Pat's one, but a bit pacier and a little bit higher in pitch as well, just to get him more feeling like they're part of the same family. The second one was Norman, who is one of the biggest, mainest characters in the whole book. But the reason I had to re-record him is my own fault, in that I created a voice for him fairly early on, and I thought I'd stick to it. But what inevitably happened is I didn't stick to it. Just because he's in it a lot, and I think when you go away from a project for a day and come back, sometimes things get, I don't know. Basically, I just forgot how to do Norman's voice between some of the recording sessions, and he turns a little bit Londoner. So I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but then after listening back to the chapters, you find that his H sounds aren't coming through. He's not saying he, he's saying E, and all those other little Londonisms coming through in his voice. And then after re-listening, so like, oh God, what have I done with him? And then there's other little parts which you pointed out where he's accidentally gotten his voice confused with another character called Cummy Ian, which is another. So if I circle way back to that first podcast I did with Hawk and Cleaver, the one with the German scientist, I had that exact same problem going back. So the German scientist at the beginning, he's quite mellow, and he says they're going to do a procedure where they will remove the body and do this. But by the end, he turns into sort of crazy, wacko German. It's like, oh no, the bodies are rejecting the heads. Oh, what will we do? And early on, I learned to try and go back and keep those voices consistent. But I think over 7.5 hours, it became a lot more difficult. And so what effectively did was went back through all of Norman's voice and picked out the samples where he'd turned to Londoner or something else had gone wrong with them and just re-recorded all of that.
Yeah, but I think it really served the story a lot, because I think as well, I mean, the kind of early recordings of Norman, whilst they were good, it was almost too tongue-in-cheek. He was almost
Yeah.
too larger than life, whereas, once you re-recorded, I mean, obviously Norman is a hell of a character. He is a bit larger than life, but it was just kind of turned down and more consistent. And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess what you can do for a 20-minute story, a 20-minute episode of the other stories, to maintain consistency for this kind of bombastic accent. I mean, yeah, it's going to take its toll on you and maybe the listener as well. I got 7 hours of
You need
this,
to put a
but
warning on this.
right, yeah, and there need to be several warnings. I mean, it's called Daddy's Boy, which I hope serves as an all-encompassing warning in general. But I think, what one of the things I absolutely love about you as a narrator, and we probably see it more in Daddy's Boy than a lot of your other work, just because of how many characters there are and how long it is, but is the sheer variety of accents and voices, which you did incredibly well. And,
Thank you.
sometimes, I mean, oftentimes, in fact, you're listening to an audiobook, and if you weren't paying attention, it might be difficult to know, okay, which character is talking right now. But you're going to know when Norman is talking, you're going to know when Wentworth is talking, and you're sure as hell going to know when Colin is talking
Or rapping.
or
Or
rapping. Yeah.
his version of rap.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, you did it so well as well that I was laughing several times during, the listening, and I thought, am I being a complete dickhead here? Because on multiple re-listens, I'm laughing, and like obviously a lot of it is because your performance is so good, but I'm like, I wrote this. I know that the joke is coming, and yet here I am laughing as if I've heard it for the first time. This is
I
so
think it's
pretentious.
absolutely fine to do that.
Yeah. And especially that penultimate chapter where it goes absolutely off the wall.
So, chapter 36, as we both almost know it word for word now, I think.
Yeah.
So when I was doing that first read through, thankfully I was at home at the time, not on the tube. But I was reading through it, and my first process, I was reading it, I was laughing, I was having so much fun. My second process, screaming internally, going, oh my God, there's so many people in this. How do I do this? And they're talking to each other, talking to different people, going off, doing their own thing. It's like, so my first thought was internal panic. But rising panic is sort of a theme of the book, I think, and that's a lot of Wentworth's arc as well. So I channeled that into it, I think.
Yeah.
But
yeah, enormously successfully. And like, I can't wait for people to listen to it. And I'm not going to have to wait too long, because
Not too
it's
long,
going
no.
to be available on Spotify, I believe, when it comes out, which is
Yeah.
tomorrow at the time of recording, and Libro FM, and the other places will shortly follow based on their own goddamn distribution time chains. So, it's going wide. It's going to be available everywhere. So if it's not on people's kind of audiobook platform of choice now, then it's on its way. And in fact, like I was gonna say, people will be able to listen, for free to a little sample. And yeah, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I actually think the retail sample is something we could talk a little bit about, because I mean, when you put an audiobook out, it's standard practice that you will put a retail sample, so the preview section of up to about 5 minutes. Although there have been some that I've listened to for audiobooks that were as much as 10 minutes, but that's definitely not the norm. It's normally between about 2.5 to 5 minutes as that sweet spot. And the typical thing to do would be to have it quite near the start. However, there is another thing, which is you're not meant to have profanity. And, I mean, one of the blurbs does call this a profanity-laced cocktail, and I think that is quite accurate. And there's a lot of swearing. You
I did
tallied
a
up.
swear count.
Yeah,
If
you
you
did a
remember, quite
swear
early
count,
on.
and we can swear on This Is Horror. So I think fuck was number one. Was shit second, or did cunt come second?
I think
I've not said that on the
was a
podcast.
close third.
Yeah,
Shit.
yeah,
But in total, fuck, cunt, shit, and its their variance was I think 0.6% of the word count.
yeah, yeah. So that's a admirable word count, or an admirable percentage, particularly if you like profanity. And so this means that, like, it's enormously difficult to find even a 2-minute section that does not have swearing. So we were discussing what to do. One of your solutions, which I ultimately didn't go with, and I just found too jarring but hilarious, was, you gave me a section and you're like, what if I literally bleep out the swearing? But there's a bleep every 10 seconds. And my big worry as well was like, what if people listening think this is the final product? And I don't know. I mean, it was very funny. So, but I think it would be so funny that after listening, you'd probably be like, well, I've not a clue what the fuck was going on there. But yeah, you will be none the wiser. So in fact, what we did was we took one of the sections where there was hardly any swearing. I think you changed a few words, and
I changed one shit to stuff,
yeah.
and that's it. But there were some other minor swear words in there, like bloody and bastard, which we weren't sure if Find Away Voices, the
Yeah.
platform publishing, would take issue with. But fortunately, they didn't. They were fine with us bloody bastards.
Yeah. So I think one of your things was like, look, they say that on Coronation Street all the time, and Coronation Street is referenced at least a couple of times in Daddy's Boys. So I thought, if it's good enough for Corrie, it's good enough for us. And as Norman says, you don't bloody think you're better than Corrie, do you, boy? And no, we don't. So there it is. I wonder, what did you find to be the funniest parts of the story, or the funniest parts to record?
So the line that made me laugh out loud on the tube is, "You steal candy from babies too, or do you just go up to prams and punch the kids dead in the face?"
Yeah.
It's out of context, it's going to sound really bad, which is why I didn't explain it to people on the tube. It sums up sort of Wentworth's sardonic nature as well, and his reactions to Norman.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things that out of context would be very offensive and difficult to explain, but equally, even when you put them in context, it's like some might argue, I'm not sure that it's any better. But well, I'm glad that am I glad? I think I'm glad I could create that moment. I realize I'm saying I'm glad I could make you look like a fucking idiot and maybe be marginally uncomfortable. I don't know, but I want people to react to the book. I want these visceral reactions. So as the author, you being uncomfortable publicly, job done.
During recording, the thing I laughed the most during chapter 36, and like for the most part during the book, during the funny bits, I could just keep a straight face because I'm in character as Wentworth, and most of the time he doesn't find any of this shit funny, and he's sort of, I feel he's using humor to sort of distract himself from the horrible situation he's found himself in. But then when I got into chapter 36, switching between all these different people, and it just turns into a clown show. It's just, for little bits, I just couldn't keep it together. And I think I sent you a supercut of some of that. And that's only like the highlights as well. If I'd sent you the whole thing, you'd still be listening to it now.
Well, maybe for the audio listeners rather than the video version, but for the audio listeners, maybe I'll put that as outtakes at the end of this episode so that they can just hear, you cracking up while trying to narrate. Now, I wonder, as you said, this is your first.
Oh, wait. That last bit, I think there might be a spoiler in I think one of the third lines are recorded.
Okay. Well, I'll listen back, and if there's like a big spoiler, then we can cut it. Now, this is your first kind of full-length audiobook, but as you said, certainly not your first rodeo in terms of recordings. You've done, I think you said, over 200 for the other stories. You've acted in numerous plays, so you've had your own podcast, Miscreations. But I wonder, kind of having put this audiobook out into the world, what would you say are some of the do's and don'ts of recording an audiobook, and what kind of lessons might you take forward for future projects? Either things that you're like, you will absolutely do that, or, well, do's and don'ts again. I'm just fucking repeating myself.
I'd say do try and get everything right the first time round. You won't manage it, but at least try. I think if I'd done a bit more preparation on, for example, Norman's voice, I think maybe I could have kept it more consistent throughout that, maybe practiced more throughout the days leading up to the recording sessions. It might have saved me a bunch of time in the end, going through and doing it. Second, try and keep as word perfect as possible, because as you pointed out in various notes, sometimes my brain sort of sometimes auto-corrected a bunch of things to how I might personally pronounce stuff. So, for example, towards, I accidentally kept saying toward a bunch of times, and just loads of other little words as well, which ended up having to go back and re-record as they were actually written. Don't start a recording session immediately after having a big meal.
I mean, that's good advice. Yeah.
I feel it should be like really basic advice for most people, but like I think I did it once during this session just because I was being dumb, and but yeah, after doing that, just sort of like your voice just, it isn't the same. Just like you'd go into the session just like, chapter 5, Wentworth was
sounds like my gran is on the line.
And I think after doing one audiobook, I'm definitely not the right person to be taking do's and don'ts from. So maybe after my 5th one, I'll put out a statement with all the correct do's and don'ts.
Yeah, I think what we have is a incredibly polished and professional kind of final product. And I know, when people are working with me, I know that I'm incredibly pedantic and I call kind of things out. And so, yeah, I mean,
I think you absolutely should be, because it's being released under your name and my name, and we don't want to put something out there which is amateurish, like in sound quality or anything. So you're absolutely right to be pedantic about those corrections.
Yeah, well, thank you. Not everybody agrees with that assessment, but that has always been my approach, and I've been very kind of direct about it when working with people on anything. I want to get things right. I am a perfectionist. But yeah, what we have done with Daddy's Boy is, it's remarkable. I'm very proud of it, and I'm hoping, and we've said, hopefully, fingers crossed, working on some other things in the future.
Yeah.
And this isn't, the first time that we've worked together in terms of, you mentioned Miscreations, but we did a number of things with the other stories. Like, I know that you narrated my story Legend. That's
Yeah.
one that particularly comes to mind.
The boy in the penguin costume as well.
Oh yeah, that's a story that a lot of people say, what the fuck was that? I mean, having worked with me on these things before, like, how did you react to Daddy's Boy when you read it?
I remember my thought process was, this is different but expected. It's like I remember sort of your writing style from the projects we worked on. I thought you'd taken it to a new level with that, but it has your voice through it entirely. Like, if you'd given it me without the author's name, I probably could have identified it as you.
Yeah, that's a tremendous compliment, and like I'm glad, and that that I think recently, over the last few years, I've just been leaning more into being authentically me, even if it is perhaps ironically meant that the fiction that I'm writing is less and less commercial, but at least I'm having fun doing it.
Yeah.
And so, maybe about 30 minutes ago now, before we went into Daddy's Boy, I said that I wanted to talk about your kind of work routine, your creative life. So, I mean, you said before you're doing all sorts of projects, but what does a typical week or a typical month look like for you? Do you have a day job alongside the different creative projects, and like, how are you structuring your time?
100% have a day job. I'm not I don't have a rich daddy giving me money to pursue these interests, and I definitely don't make enough money off miscreation royalties, I'm afraid. So yeah, I have my day job, IT technician at a university. So that takes up most of my time, but it's a great job, quite fulfilling. Lots of interesting, because it's a creative arts university. So get to meet a bunch of people from different backgrounds there creatively. And then go home, meet up with friends. I play a lot of like D&D with friends as well, which is creating stories together, collaborative storytelling, if you want to put that spin on it. And in the past few years, I think I've been, writing and performing less and less. So this has given me a great opportunity to come back to it a bit more and put more hours into it. It's, recording Daddy's Boy. But yeah, I'd like to give you some official structure, but there isn't one really. It's just, if I think of something and I want to do something and start working on something, I just do it. I put some time together and do it. If not, I'm doing something else. I'm relaxing or chilling or doing something else. So, in conclusion, no real official structure for me.
Yeah. And I mean, what are some creative projects that you currently have on the go, or what are you looking to do in the future?
I'm writing a novel. At least I think it's a novel at the moment. It might turn into an audio drama or something else, depending on how it goes. My elevator pitch for it is: you think that films are created with actors and sets, but no, filmmakers actually go to alternate dimensions to film events happening in other universes.
I am
That's
very
my pitch for it.
interested in that, and I know that my co-host, who it is like kind of 3 a.m. or something in America, that's why he's not with us. He would absolutely lap it up as well. Oh my god, yeah, you have to keep going with that one, and let me know when when it's ready. I want to read this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm into it. It's
We'll
that
listen to
kind
it.
of.
I'm not sure what it is yet.
What did you? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
or the yeah, but yeah, that is that kind of futuristic kind of what the fuckery that's difficult to put in a neat genre box, but I'm
Yeah.
very much about it. It almost sounds like a Black Mirror episode.
Ooh, maybe. It's set in sort of 2010 because it's at the height of sort of the streaming wars, sort of between Netflix, Amazon, and this third streaming company I've invented, which the main character works for. So the idea is that they're trying to get new and original shows by going to new and more dangerous places.
Yeah, I'm so in for that. Please keep writing it. Please please finish it. All right. Well, I mean, I wonder, since this is a horror podcast, what frightens you?
Oof. Um, hmm. I think my actual phobia is being buried alive, which unlikely to happen, but let's hope not. Other things that frighten me, I don't want to leave it on a bad note though. Like I was going to say a changing world, which might be changing for the worse.
Well, I mean, don't
That's
worry, because
frightening.
there'll be another question, so we're
Yeah.
not going to
Okay.
just
Good.
end the episode. But yeah, I mean that is like a very reasonable fear, and I feel almost like a universal fear, and it seems like one that has happened throughout the ages. But I suppose because we don't know what the future holds, there's always that possibility: is this changing for the worse, and is it going to be irreparably damaged? And as an optimist, I would say I hope not, but
Yeah.
I can't tell you, which hopefully you didn't expect going on this podcast. You get the answer. It's like, oh well, it's a waste of fucking time then. Well, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Enjoy yourself, because time goes by quickly, and you realize that the opportunities to enjoy yourself will become fewer and fewer as time goes by.
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
it is very good advice. And if you really, really enjoy yourself with a lot of other people, then find Daniel Willcocks and get tested for chlamydia. Bring us back full circle. And I cannot believe that your origin story meeting Daniel Willcocks, because I first met you because of him, and you met him because he was going around encouraging people. Next time he's on the show,
Yeah.
or I'm on his show, because I might be on the other stories to discuss Daddy's Boy as part of the occasional interview series that they do. I need to ask him about that. Is this a passion? Why did you?
I'm not sure if he's still doing it. I don't think he
Still
is.
doing it. He's still right. He's right now at a
Yeah.
university campus. I mean, maybe he felt guilty. Maybe we don't need to go there, but it's implied for the listeners. He was much younger at the time, anyway, as we all were. So
Yeah.
it is less sinister than if he felt guilty now and was going to universities trying to see if freshers could get tested for chlamydia. There was no chlamydia in Daddy's Boy. There were a lot of
No mention
kind
of
of
it.
bodily fluids and functions, but no reference to chlamydia.
Did Norman ever have chlamydia?
I
In your
mean,
opinion?
I'm sure that he did, but it's not explicitly stated in the text. But I mean, he was the talk of Bodmin Beach in the 1980s. So,
Yeah.
and the way that Norman was conceived was the back of Helford's car park. So he doesn't strike me as somebody who is particularly um like indulges in safe sex practices, let's put it like that. And he had
Yeah.
a go on not Collins, Cummy
I was
Ian's
going to say,
mum.
what?
Or he maybe had a go on. He could have had a go on anyone. He was very prolific. And on that note, where can people connect with you?
The only social media network I'm on currently, I think, is Blue Sky. That and LinkedIn. But I don't really use LinkedIn that much. But yeah, if I ever post any updates, you can find me on Blue Sky.
And are you open for commissions or kind of narrating opportunities if people are interested?
Absolutely. Yeah, if anyone can just contact me via Blue Sky, we can discuss it.
Okay. What is your Blue Sky? Because I know it's not the easiest name. I don't know if people are gonna be able to
Should have
find
learned
that.
this off by heart. Well, it's quite easy to remember. It's JC spelled JAYCEY 589.bsky.social. Nice and easy to remember.
Why is it 589?
I don't know. It's a number I've used for like a bunch of different accounts over the years. Just because Josh Curran's never been available. Someone else has got to it before me.
Well, just as long as you're not also giving us like your PIN code or your password. It's like 589 when you're asked like add a number to this password.
Yeah. One of my first emails included my like the full line of my address at the time, which I created when I was like 7. But I've since learned that's not a good idea.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. There's a story to be had there, and it is a story of home invasion and trauma, I think. Well, do you have any final thoughts or final requests to ask of the listeners and viewers?
I'd say go check out Daddy's Boy on Spotify or Audible or wherever you get your audiobooks from. And if you want to listen to the first chapter for free, I believe you can listen to that on your Patreon, Michael.
You certainly can. Patreon.com/Michael David Wilson. This was not pre-planned. I didn't say I'll give you an extra tenner, which Norman would probably do if your final thought is promoting the book and mentioning the Patreon. But yeah, it's absolutely true. All right. Well, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Josh Curran on This Is Horror. Next time I will be chatting to Paul Goblish about everything Thunderstorm books. So if you want to get the inside scoop on how to make a gorgeous hardcover limited edition and how Thunderstorm books started, that is the episode for you. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about my plan to take This Is Horror to the next level and make the podcast my full-time job. I've posted about this on the website, but for listeners, here's the vision. To consistently put out 2 episodes of the show per week. To put all video episodes up in the same week as the audio episodes. for the new upcoming book section on the This Is Horror website to become the most comprehensive and complete resource for horror fiction in the world. And for every year, a minimum of 50% of This Is Horror guests will be first-time guests on the show. That is to keep things fresh, to make sure that we are exposing listeners, readers, to as many new voices as possible, and not just having the same old conversations with the same people. Although, of course, there will be recurring guests who are favorites, who are friends of the show. So 50%, it feels like a good number to get that balance. And finally, to shout out and give more exposure to more writers on the show. Specifically, I will utilize the upcoming book section on the This Is Horror website to mention upcoming releases. So this is the vision, this is my focus, this is the This Is Horror mission statement. Now, I won't be able to do all of these things overnight, but I want This Is Horror podcast to be the people's podcast. We say we're the voice of horror, and I want us to amplify all voices. Now, if you want to support the show, there are a number of ways you can do that. The best way, and the most direct way, is to become a patron, to become a paid tier patron at patreon.com/This Is Horror. Now, doing this will allow me a somewhat stable and consistent income, and it will allow me to expand the podcast. Now, another way you can run an advert on This Is Horror podcast. Email me, michael@thisishorror.co.uk, if you've got a book that you want to advertise, and we can talk about that. You can also leave a review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts. You can rate the podcast on Spotify, and you can spread the word about the podcast and individual episodes on social media. And I would include, in terms of social media, commenting on video episodes on YouTube, and of course, subscribing to the YouTube channel. And finally, you can do what you're already doing. You can listen to the podcast, because really, isn't that what it's all about? And if you love it, if an episode resonates, share it with a friend. Now, before I wrap up and tell you about the upcoming books for this week, a quick advert break.
It was as if the video had unzipped my skin, slunk inside my tapered flesh, and become one with me.
From the creator of This Is Horror comes a new nightmare for the digital age, The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. After a teacher receives a weirdly arousing video, his life descends into paranoia and obsession. More videos follow, each containing information no stranger could possibly know. But who's sending them, and what do they want? The answers may destroy everything and everyone he loves. The Girl in the Video is The Ring meets Fatal Attraction for the iPhone generation. Available now in paperback, ebook, and audio.
What if the end of the world didn't come with a bang, but with a breach? In the Infernal Age, Demogate, a failed experiment destroys all technology, killing millions, and opens a gateway to something far worse. Demons now roam the earth, and humanity's only hope lies in adapting to the ashes of a broken world. If you love the creeping dread of the mist, the poignant grit of the road, and the dark humor of the cabin in the woods, you'll feel right at home in this post-apocalyptic blend of horror and sci-fi. The Infernal Age, Demogate, is available now on Amazon, Audible, and bookshop.org. Step to the gate, if you dare.
Okay, so I want to tell you what is coming out on June the 24th, which at the time of recording is today in Japan. And for most of you, it'll be June 23rd. But by the time you hear this, these books are now out. And I'm hoping that I can make this a somewhat regular part of the show. So here we go. Books released on the 24th of June, 2025. First up, we've got Brave New Weird, Volume 3. The most important meal of the day is weird. This is a Tenebrous Press weird fiction anthology. It is becoming a kind of classic of the weird fiction genre, so certainly one to consider picking up. And next we've got Dark Circuitry by Kirk Bueckert. I'm sorry if I've completely butchered your surname there, but for people searching for it, it is Bueckert. The tagline: in the wake of a devastating global pandemic, 60 million people take refuge in fortified bunkers across the quarantine zone. So that is a science fiction book that is out via Dark Matter Inc. Next up is Don't Let Him In by Lisa Jewell. It is from Atria Books. It is a thriller. 3 women are connected by one man in this kaleidoscopic thriller. Honestly, I know this podcast is about horror, but I am a sucker for a good thriller book, so I might have to check that one out. And talking of thrillers, we've got Glass Girls by Danny Shokuhi. Again, apologies if I've got your name wrong. Call me out, let me know how to pronounce it. It's from Zando, it's from the Gillian Flynn books line. A former child medium is forced to face her deadly past and the ghost she left behind in this electrifying debut. Well, I want to read it, and I like Gillian Flynn. I like that there is a new Gillian Flynn books line, so color me intrigued. And goodness, talking about intrigued, how did I not know about this? And get ready for me to butcher another name. This is Run Werewolf Run by Honor Tukel, inspired by the works of John Cheever and Richard Yates, plus every great werewolf movie you've ever seen. Run Werewolf Run is the first novel from writer-director Honor Tukel. It's from Pitchstone Publishing. It's horror, but it sounds like there's a lot of dark humor. I am so in for that. Hook me up with a copy. Well, you don't need to, do you? I can buy it. That went very Alan Partridge. I can buy it. It's out today. Next, Smile for the Cameras by Miranda Smith from Bantam. An actress desperate to reclaim her fame must survive the real-life plot of the horror movie that made her famous in this psychologically twisted locked room thriller. Goddamn, that sounds really good too. That sounds like it could almost be a Black Mirror episode. Next up, 10 Sleep by Nicholas Bellards. Jordan Peele's Nope meets True Grit in Nicholas Bellard's 10 Sleep, a supernatural modern-day western, Bob's in modern-day western, about a trio of young people on a 10-day cattle drive that leads them through a canyon haunted by ancient mysteries. This is unbelievable how much they packing into this one-liner. A canyon haunted by ancient mysteries and savage beasts who existed long before humankind. Wow. 10 Sleep by Nicholas Bellards. Pick it up. The Compound by Aisling Rule. Random House, psychological thriller. Nothing to lose, everything to gain. Winner takes all. Color me intrigued. The No End House by Jeremy Bates. This is from Kensington. In the tradition of Saw and Eli Roth's Hostel, but with the evil supernatural twists of Stephen King, Elmer Katsu, and Christopher Golden, 2 strangers unwittingly volunteer for the ultimate haunted house challenge in Barcelona's Gothic Quarter. I gotta say, the people writing the blurbs, writing the one-liners, you are bringing your A game. It sounds brilliant, and to have something like Saw and Hostel, but to marry that together with Stephen King, Elmer Katsu, and Christopher Golden, are you kidding me? Of course I'm in. The No End House by Jeremy Bates. I've got a lot of reading ahead. This is just this week. Oh my God. The Rewilding by Robert Evans. In the quiet of the Scottish countryside, a young boy has been killed. Nobody is sure how or by what. It's a thriller. I'm interested. I am interested. The World Turns Red by Tim Wagner. Welcome to the meat room. That's it. But it's Tim Wagner. It's a horror novella. It's a little over 80 pages. Look, we're friends with Tim Wagner on This Is Horror. We know we're in good hands. You can just say welcome to the meat room. That's enough. Jesus Christ. What a fantastic slate of books coming up. I hope that you're intrigued. You can get that list on thisishorror.co.uk. I've put it up. It's in the news tab, so you'll be able to see it. There's also an upcoming books tab too. Let me know which one you are most excited about. Goodness, like scrolling down that list, I mean, where do you even begin? Obviously, Brave New Weird, if you like weird fiction. Run, Werewolf, Run, because of the dark humor. That has got me very interested. And both Smile for the Cameras and the No End House, goodness, they have very intriguing premises. So that's it for this time on This Is Horror. Next time I'm with Paul Goblish of Thunderstorm Books. But until then, take care of yourselves. Be good to one another. Read horror. Keep on writing and have a great, great day.
This is Horror Podcast.